morning, Year 11. I'm sorry I can't be with you today. I'm obviously self-isolating, but also my internet at home still isn't sorted, having moved house last week. So I've tried to record a video for you, which hopefully will mean that you're not missing out and being put on cover, that you're actually being able to learn something. So decided to do rearranging formula with you today, which is a really important topic that's going to enable you to get those little few extra marks, but also going to help you to do our next hour, which is to start off on simultaneous equations, which I know we did before the lockdown, but I wanted to make sure that we had a real good understanding of that ready for our mocks that are coming up in December. So make sure you got the title down, Rearranging Formulae, and our objectives today are to be able to rearrange an equation and rearrange equations involving squares and square roots. So before you start, I want you to have a go. This is your starter, and there are 6 questions here. So we're going to pause the video, give yourself 5 minutes, see how many you can answer. Okay, so just going to put the answers up here just to refresh you. So I've subtracted 7 from both sides to get x is 5. On question 2, you have to divide both sides by 5 to give you x is 8. On question 3, you have to add the 4, and it gives you 16 is 2x, and then we're dividing by 2 to give us x equals 8. On question 4, we're dividing both sides by 3. Remember, you've got a negative there, so we get x is minus 11. Question 5, you can't actually solve this. We're going to talk about this in this whole topic. And on question 6, you had to collect all the x's on the left-hand side. So to do that, you have to minus 3x from both sides, and you get 2x is 10, then divide it by 2, and you get x equals 5. So we're going to have a look at question 5 now, okay? This is an example of a rearranging formulae question because you can't actually solve it, okay? Because we've got 2 variables, not just one, like all of the other questions. So we're going to rearrange, okay, and put the 9 on the other side. So all I'm going to do is just subtract 9 from both sides. And if I did this, because I don't know what y is, I end up with y minus 9 equals x, okay? Now, because x is on its own, that is going to be the subject. Okay, and that's what it means by rearrange to make something the subject of a formula. It means get it on its own. Okay, so make sure there's only one of the term that it's asking for. So we're going to be focusing on that for the rest of this lesson. So we're going to start with these 2 questions. Make sure you write these down in your book so you've got good, clear notes, and let's see how we get on. So make y the subject. So this means that I want to rearrange it and get y on its own. So if we look at question A, I've got a minus 6 that's next door to y that I need to move. And we know that we can move that by adding. So on the left hand side now, because I don't know what x is, I have to write x plus 6. And on the right hand side, I've just got y. And then you go look at your final answer, go, is y the subject? Is it on its own? Yes, great, we've answered the question. So question B, again, we've got the plus 7 next to the y, so I'm going to move that first. So I end up with x minus 7 on the left-hand side and 2y on the right. Now, is y currently the subject? No, it's not on its own. There are 2 of them, okay? 2 lots of y. So we need to now get rid of 2y. Think about what you do with equations. You would divide it by 2. So just to be aware of this, because x minus 7 is one chunk, you should write it as a fraction, because that means you're dividing the whole of x minus 7 by 2. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Pause the video, spend 5 to 10 minutes on these questions. Make sure you can do all of these, guys. Don't just do the red. It's really helpful to make sure you can do as many of the different colours as possible. So we're going to give you 10 minutes and then the answer is going to go up. And here are your answers for that last task. So the next thing we're going to look at is rearranging formulae with squares. So if this question came up in your exam and it said x squared equals 100, how can we work out what the value of x is? How can we solve this equation? Now, hopefully we can think back to Pythagoras and various other things, and we know that the opposite of squaring is square rooting. So we're going to square root both sides, and by doing that, that gives me x equals 10. However, there is another answer here. Think about what other numbers would times together to make 100. it's going to be minus 10 as well. Remember, a square root actually has a positive and a negative answer, because minus 10 times minus 10 gives you positive 100. Just something to think about in the future. So we're going to apply the same thing here, but to where we've got lots of terms, we can't actually solve it. So if you've got x squared equals y, I'm going to square root x and square root y to get x on its own. And now I've made x the subject of the formula, and because I don't know what y is, I've written it as square root of y. So let's apply it to some more rearranging formula questions. So these questions say make x the subject of the formula. Remember to write it down, guys, if you know that you're going to forget this. So question A, look what's next door to the x squared, the plus 6. So we're going to subtract that from both sides. So I've got x squared on my left hand side and y minus 6 on the right. And now to get rid of this x squared, we are going to square root. And remember, you're square rooting all of y minus 6, which means that you need to have y minus 6 all under the square root, like that. And now we've got x on its own. Perfect. Question B, we've got root x equals y plus 2. Now think about what's going to get rid of that square root. You're going to have to square the square root to get rid of it. Okay? So if I was to square root x, I'm going to get x on its own, which is what I want. But I'm also going to square y plus 2. Now what you should do is put this in a bracket here, because it's the whole thing being squared. And if you think back to expanding double brackets, it's not quite the same as squaring the y and squaring the 2. It's a little bit different. So now we've got x on its own. You've answered the question. So here's some questions for you to have a go at. Again, 10 minutes. Again, get a wide range of questions done. And pause the video and see how you get on. And these are your answers for the last task. Mark your work. Hopefully you've got those correct. So our final thing for today's lesson on rearranging formula is when we've got fractions involved. So we've got two questions here. We say make x the subject of the formula, which again means we want x on its own. Okay. Now we've got to think about the first one, how we get rid of the divide by 2. Now we should know from before that to get rid of a divide by 2, we multiply by 2. So I'm going to do that to both sides, which gives me 2y equals x. Is x now on its own? Yes. I've rearranged it. Question finished. Now question B. Now what we need to be aware of on question B here is that actually x is on the denominator, and that's not really very helpful. Okay, we can't, because if we times it over, it's not actually on its own. So we're going to do that first and see what happens. I'm going to multiply my x to move it from the denominator up to the left hand side. Now remember, y times x you would write as yx or xy, like I've done. And then we've got equals 7 because the x on the right side is gone. Now we want to get x on its own. Because it's been times by y, we're now going to have to divide by y to get x on its own. So we get x equals 7 divided by y, and now we've got x on its own, and it's complete. Now some of you might notice that if you look back to the top, all I've actually done is switch the y and the x over. And that rule works for any fractions when you've got the denominator and you want to make it the subject. So if you feel confident doing that, go for it. If not, work your way through like I've done and you'll still get the same answer. So again, pause the video, have between 5 to 10 minutes on these questions and see how you get on. And these are your answers for your last task. Okay, so the final thing I'd like you to have a go at Year 11 today is a GCSE question that was worth 3 marks from November 19. I want you to pause the video, have a go, but you can see there's a little hint in the cloud in the corner just to help you push you in the right direction. Okay, so hopefully you've had a go at least trying to do something on this question. Okay, what we need to think about here is what the question's actually asking you to do. Okay, so we need to know how many workers for each company there is. Okay, and it says in the question that n is the number of workers used each day. So what we really need to do is get n to be the subject, like I said in my hint, because then you can start substituting numbers into that formula and figuring out how many workers there are. So let's rearrange it. Okay, if I times by n, I get nd equals 720, so I've got rid of my fraction. Then I can divide by d, and I get n equals 720 over d. Or you could have used the quick way and just switch them over, switch the n and the d over. Your choice. Okay, so now we've got that, we're going to work out Ali's company and Hayley's company, see how long it will take, okay, and how many workers they'll need. So Ali's company has 40 days, so you have to do 720 divided by 40. Hayley's company has 30 days, so you do 720 divided by 30. So these are my answers here. And as you can see, I've got 18 workers for Ali, 24 workers for Hayley. So the difference, because there's how many more, is 6. So Hayley will need 6 more workers. Hopefully you found this lesson useful and helpful, guys. My next lesson is going to be on simultaneous equations after your break. Bye.